Tech Revision with Mrs. Swanee Pooh.
Hi everyone, this video is going to be quite a quick one, quite a short video, all about these things called standard components. This tends to come up quite a bit in the exam, and it's also an interesting and important thing for you to reference in your NEA projects as well. So let's get started. Standard components, the first thing that you need to know about them is that they are basically parts that come ready-made for whatever they are going to do. So for example, if you were a manufacturer and you were making a lovely table, obviously you would make the legs, you would make the top bit, but to join everything together, you may buy in, it could be knockdown fittings, it could be screws, it could be nuts and bolts, but whatever you order in, say you order in some screws, you are not going to make those yourself, you will buy them, they are ready-made and ready to use in different sizes and types, and these are called standard components. Okay, so to go down to these next points from the revision guide, they are common fixings and parts that people that make products buy. So it would be really weird if you were a manufacturer of tables and furniture but you also made your own screws and your own nails and your own hinges. That would be a really ridiculously expensive way of doing things. If you think about it, you would need lots of different types of machinery, you would need a lot more manufacturing space, more workers, more investment. So what they do is they leave that bit to the specialists, people that make just screws, just rivets, just buttons, just hinges, and they buy those in. Okay, so standard components are mass produced. So this means obviously that they are available at low cost to manufacturers because you would buy them in bulk, and that brings a scales of economy. The more you buy, the cheaper it tends to be. So that's another advantage. Using standard components saves time during manufacturing. So that makes it more efficient. So they save time as you know that you've got plenty of them available. They are all going to be the same size, they're going to be the same quality. There's not going to be any issues with getting them. So for example, screws come in different sizes, and nuts and bolts do as well, M4, M5, M6, and they are the same across the world. So that's why they are called standard components. Number 4, this is kind of going back to that point that the manufacturer of, say, the furniture, the table here, they do not need to get some specialist machinery and extra materials to make the screws and nuts and bolts. So this saves a lot of money. Buying standard components saves a lot of money, saves a lot of time. And another big benefit is when designers are working on a new product, they can specify the standard component that they are going to use. So for example, if say something that was being made of sheet metal, so say you had 2 parts that are going to join together here, you could say that you want an M6 bolt, which just means a 6mm bolt, to go through this hole, and you can kind of say that already, and that kind of helps with the planning of the product. You could order in the standard components really easily, and quite often in CAD programs you could specify and say I'm going to use an M6 bolt here, and that kind of helps to plan and make the whole design process more efficient because you're already planning the types of standard components that would be needed in your product. So standard components are really simple to understand, and I'm going to show you some examples now just to make it even more simple, but they are ready-made bits and bobs that you might need to assemble your product. So here's some examples, and you've used a lot of these in the workshop at school. So I'm not saying that you need to know every different type of screw, but you might want to have an awareness that there are different types. So the first one we're going to have a really quick chat about is screws. They are used to join wood, metal and plastics together, and you've got a variety of different ones. So you've got some with these almost like these countersink heads, so that if you had a piece of wood like this and you drill a hole, you can do a countersink and then the screw, when it goes in there, sits nice and flat with the top of the wood. And there's loads of different types here, but yeah, they're mostly used to join woods, metals and plastics together. So that's screws. Nuts and bolts. They are quite often used to join thin materials like metal and plastics together, so like sheet metal and plastics. They're not commonly used on wood. They are not used on wood. Sometimes they can be used in the prototyping, but they would never be used in an actual finished product, in industry anyway. And they tend to come in M sizes, so M2, M4, M6. This just means M2 is 2 millimeters, M4 is 4 millimeters, and so on. So that's nuts and bolts. Then you've got rivets. Not rivets, that's what one of my students thought it was, rivets the whole way through, like frogs, but it's not, it's rivets. This is the name of my cat, actually. One of my cats is called Rivet. There you go. It's used to join sheet metal together. And this is a bit more of a permanent fixing. I don't know if I spelled permanent wrong there, apologies if I do. It's not an English revision video, at least. And they look a little bit like this. And it's quite tricky to understand how these work, just from the picture of this rivet here. But imagine we are looking at two sheets of material that need to be joined together. What you do is you put the rivet through like this. So imagine that this rivet here is gone through these two pieces of thin metal. And what basically happens is this is pushed and pushed and pushed until this bit squashes and squashes and squashes until you have basically a join that looks like this. So it has two ends that are squashed on either end, and they look a little bit like this, and basically the metal is squashed on either side, which stops it coming apart, and that's what riveting is. If you really don't understand that, have a look on YouTube for some rivet demonstrations. And also, I can tell you now it's not going to come up, this one does not come up in the mock exam, but if you do want me to show you it in the workshop at any point, I can show you that. I probably will do. And the last one quickly is hinges. I don't need to talk about these very much, do I? This one's called a butt hinge. Ha. And this one's called a pivot hinge. So basically, you can see why companies would want to buy these as standard components. It would take a lot of work to manufacture a hinge. Anyone who's tried to make a hinge, you realise it's quite a tricky thing to do. But you can buy these in and you know that they are going to function and be to specific sizes. There's lots of different hinges you can buy. Obviously, they create areas that can move, like doors on cupboards and all sorts of different things. But these are just some examples of standard components. And the main things to remember are they are standard parts, bits and bobs that manufacturers buy in. Some advantages, you know they are going to be of a standard size. The quality is going to be very good because they've been tested by the people that make them. They are readily available. They are standard across the world. So you know that someone in China, for example, would have a similar access to these components. And it makes the whole process more efficient and reduces costs for the manufacturer. I hope that makes sense. See you on the next video.